Welcome to the second installment of the teachings on the Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara. Last time I introduced the text, some background of Shantideva, and some introductory, how Shantideva began the text. And we got into a few of the initial verses of the text itself. Now I should explain to you how you should listen to the teachings. I think doing this Zoom, this live streaming, on the one hand is very wonderful, very good karmic fruition to have such a rich experience of teachings all week, all day, a tapestry of Sangha always there. On the other hand, it could be that because it's in our familiar setting, we can get very comfortable and easily distracted by things that we're very familiar with. When you're sitting in a, for a Dharma teaching, you're usually sitting in some sort of a environment, sacred environment, an environment that's been sort of consecrated by practice and teachings, possibly for many years. And so there's a certain atmosphere that's compelling and sort of forces us or guides us or makes it easy to not be distracted by outer phenomena, outer things. And inwardly, we don't want to look bad in front of others. So we keep ourselves from falling asleep or looking around too much or multitasking, checking your telephone, checking your phone. I don't want to give any plugs. And things, many things. When we're in a familiar environment, pull us away, and we lose the thread of the teaching. So please create a very good attitude in your mind, not a good attitude, create a very vigilant attitude so that the teachings don't go right by you. We've all been, you're looking at a screen, you've probably been looking at a screen, I don't know how old everybody is, but most of your life, that's for sure. It's been a source of refuge in good times and bad times, sitting, doing just what you're doing now, looking at a screen. So all that, we should really feel as though we're in a very sacred place. Even you should put flowers by your screen maybe, or put offering bowls where you can see them, and images and so forth. Maybe you're sitting in a shrine room, or you could move your screen into a place where there was a little bit more of a uplifted, wholesome Dharma feeling around it. Okay, great. So that you won't be so easily led astray. Then that's not going to equally replace your attention span. So in listening to the Dharma, regard it as a practice. It's a Dharma practice, and a lot of our Dharma practice, or a lot of the Dharma, or a lot of the intentions of the Dharma, are methods to lengthen our attention span. We say expand your attention span. So if you can listen to one sentence, then see if you can listen to the second sentence. Then see if you can listen to the third sentence. So you're always being vigilant in, are you listening or not? That's like a first point. Not to just have it just go right by you as sound. Then, when you listen, and this is sort of the listening skills, the skill of a listener, is to listen in such a way that your cognitive abilities, your ability to know, we have an ability to know, that your ability to know is also engaged in your ability to hear, to listen. So that when the teachings, when you hear the Dharma teachings, that there's a hook, it registers, it goes somewhere. It's not that you would be able to say, although some, historically I've heard people who can, but it's not that you would remember every single word, but that there's you've created a what is it, like a connection, synapse, I think, something like that. So basically, so when the teachings are over, you can recollect as much as you can of the teachings, so that you can then think about them and challenge them and remove doubts that might come up, especially when there's some teachings that after the first few seconds of it, you don't like what you're hearing. Those kind. If the teachings are actually authentic, then you want to be able to absorb those in such a way that later, on your own time, you can contemplate those difficult to accept teachings and see what your problem is, or what your obstacles, or what is impeding you from getting fully on board with this or that Dharma concept. So this is like listening, where it doesn't just go in one ear and out the other. The example is like a cup that's cracked, that no matter how much and how long you pour something into it, nothing stays. So notice that when it arises. Here we're here for an hour, 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours max. So within that time period, like invigorate yourself from time to time and dispel or reject, avoid these faults of being like an upside down vessel or like a vessel that has a crack in it. And then the third, these are called the faulty listening, or the faulty listening, the flaws of a listener. The third one is that you're listening with your own kind of personal agenda. Maybe you're just here to check out something, check me out, check out the teaching. You're just here to see what you can pick up for, not for the purpose that the teachings are intended to teach, which is to tame your mind, in this case, to develop, to discover and to develop bodhicitta, but they're part of your agenda. Pride, listening with pride, listening with anger, prejudice, listening with your own opinionated ideas of what you're expecting, all these kinds of things, envy, jealousy, listening with a very, not the kind of doubt that you tried to remove when you've been listening to the teachings, but just a cynical kind of doubting, almost like you're constantly challenging and resisting the teachings. So this is like a vessel, like a cup that's dirty, that no matter how pure, undefiled, that which is poured into it is, it immediately becomes contaminated. It immediately turns rotten. So we all have kleshas, we all have these mental afflictions. So the point of knowing these three faults is to recognize them and then reject them, cast them out. So those are what you don't want. Okay, then what do you want? How should you be listening to the teachings? The short answer is you listen to the teachings with bodhicitta. Of course, here the text is how to arouse bodhicitta. So I'm sure you probably have. This is not the first time you've heard the expression, but you should reflect now at the outset of the teachings. You should really ask yourself why you are here listening to the teachings. And the answer is that you have, in the course of your kind, sensitive life, observed that there's a lot of problems. And if you've looked further and further into your life, you realize that not only you, but all life, all beings are having problems. And having some connection with the Dharma, we learn that our problems, our suffering, our problems arise from clinging, from attachment, inordinate, compulsive attachment, clinging, let's say. something, basically we can say there's something about the way my mind works that's actually at the root of the problems that I'm having. And if someone is suffering out there, an animal, a person, or whatever, whoever, if somebody's suffering out there, that means that they have a mind. You have to have a mind in order to suffer. And if they have a mind and they're suffering, then, according to Buddha's teachings, then the root of that suffering is in their clinging. Either we collectively beings are clinging to something that doesn't exist, or we're clinging to something that we think does exist. In both cases, and maybe there's other ways of clinging for sure, in both cases, or in all cases, then the clinging really has to do with our mind. And so observing that, and not only just observing it in a kind of an intellectual or a psychological way, but also with a feeling, a thinking that that we humans and we animals are all connected in various ways. We're all interdependently part of a web, the web of life. Sounds kind of cliche, but it's that. We're not independent. And we rely on others, and we've always relied on others. And others have relied on us. We wouldn't exist. This mind that's suffering would not relies on having a body. And if the body is out of balance, then our mind suffers. If our body is insulted, then our mind suffers. And so we're dependent on our body. And this body depended on birth, having a mother. And a mother depends, our dependence is on our mother and on the father. And so it's like everyone shares that same situation. So we're all dependent. We're all dependent on our parents, and it goes, there's no end to it. I mean, as far as space. They say, as far as space extends, that's as far as beings, mind-owning beings extend. And as far as mind-owning sentient beings, let's say sentient beings, as far as sentient beings extend, then that's as far as the mental afflictions extend. So wherever there's a mind that is not enlightened, there's suffering. And wherever there's a mind that's suffering, then it's part of our web. Just like we have toes on our feet, they're way down there, maybe 5-6 feet away. Social distance an amount away is our toes. But if we hurt them, a nail goes off too deep, or we stub it or something, then the whole system is thrown into a problem. We have a problem there, pain maybe, even though it's way down there. And so same with people. If people out, people down the street or around the other side of the world, if they're suffering, then we feel that. We can feel that. We should feel that because we're not separate. We're interdependent. And so we should foster that attitude, that feeling, not attitude, foster that feeling of being interdependently connected with everyone, and that because mind is involved, mind is the root of the suffering that beings are experiencing, and also mind is the root of liberation from that. Because if the cause of suffering is clinging, as Buddha Shakyamuni explained, if the cause of that suffering is clinging, then if there's no clinging, then there's no suffering. We become freed of suffering once we uproot the cause, which is clinging. So mind is the source of suffering, and mind is the source of liberation from suffering. Okay, wait, I better okay, so, okay, so our attitude for listening to the teaching should be a yearning to free others from suffering, which by inference means freeing others from clinging, and particularly the most fundamental object of clinging is a clinging to the belief in a identity, a personal identity, a personal ego or self. That which is the subject when we say things like, I'm hungry. Or my car, my mala, my pencil, my friend, my enemy. That my is, when we say that and think that way, we are practicing clinging. We are reinforcing the habit of clinging. If we examine whether that I exists, we won't find it. So we can't say, and Buddhism doesn't say, that the self is the problem. That, oh, this ego is our problem, too much ego. You know, it was my ego did it. No, we don't say that. We say clinging to the belief in the I, clinging to the belief is the target of our examination and our practice, and is the cause of our suffering. Clinging to the belief in the self, the full sentence would be clinging to the belief that there is a self when there is none, in fact. So in order to free beings from the cause of suffering, how wonderful that would be if that would happen, if beings were free from suffering, if they were free from the cause of suffering. If there's any way that I can contribute to, you think, if there's any way I can contribute to them being free of the cause of suffering, I can give a few sandwiches or a scarf or something, but my ability to free others from problems and suffering is like extraordinarily minuscule. compared to the extent of the problem, the cause of the problem. So if we can get at the cause of the problem, then by being free of clinging, it's not that that there's nothing left. But being free of clinging removes, like that clinging, the habit of clinging and the tendency to cling is an impediment. It is not our nature. It is not the nature of that mind to cling. That clinging is added. It's extra. So by removing the clinging, then one's own natural awareness, one's own natural wisdom dawns or is made obvious in order to bring all beings to that state, to that awakened state, to that awakened realization of their own mind's free, open, compassionate, luminous nature. Then I am listening to the teachings in order to be able to do that. There's an assumption with that logic that is based on not necessarily not on our own experience, but on the teachings, where they say that this nature of mind has the power to liberate beings, has the power to not liberate beings, has the power to bring beings to the path of awakening. And that power comes from, on the one hand, this inherent, natural, timeless wisdom, and the natural, all-pervasive compassion. And both of these qualities, as an inseparability, are the power of the enlightened mind. And so we should think, I must free my own mind from the impediments that prevent me from realizing my own natural Buddha mind. And in order to accomplish that, since I've been told that we've been wandering in samsara since beginningless time until now, and it just keeps going on and on. So I need to know where to put effort. It says in the text, enlightenment is attained by effort. Well, we're all very busy efforting. Here, we're efforting everywhere. We put effort all over the place. We're always putting out effort. So it's not that. It's not whoever makes the most, whoever tries the hardest gets enlightened. I don't think it says that. It's what you try hard at doing that enlightenment hinges on. And for that, we need to be able to listen to all those factors in the path that will result in awakening. And again, as I said before, mull them over, kind of convince ourselves, remove doubt, convert our stubborn mind to a flexible mind, an open mind. A lot of converting we have to do by thinking of the teachings over and over again and applying them to our life, however it presents itself. And then when we have confidence and have made a decision that yes, this is true, then you completely are able to put it into practice. As long as there's doubt and you wonder, well, Dharma, 60% is Dharma, 40% is this other stuff, then your practice will be only that much. So if we want to really become free of these impediments to our pure nature, then we need to listen, contemplate, and then apply to the full range of our experience, to our whole entire being. Okay, so then, in order to do that, then we have an opportunity to hear the teachings, you should think. And so I'm going to listen to these teachings with the intention, okay, this is the thing, okay. I'm going to listen to these teachings with the intention to put them into practice for the sake of all sentient beings, that they all enter the path and culminate that path in a state of complete, perfect enlightenment.
Hey, Mark.
Oh,
Muted.
Can you hear
Can
me?
you hear me? Okay. Can hear you now.
Okay.
I don't want to hear it.
Okay, yes, all right. So, as I said, the text we're discussing is the way of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicharyavatara, or short in the Tibetan is the Bodhicharyavatara. And by the 9th century great master, the great enlightened yogin Shantideva. And the text itself is Shantideva's synthesis, a complete condensation of a whole range of the teachings of the three baskets of the teachings of Buddha. And so we already have discussed the first three verses that contain the four essential introductory sections of homage, humility, your enthusiasm, and the commitment. So we already discussed all those aspects. And then the fourth verse, which is the sort of the going into the main body of the teaching, relates to the basis of bodhicitta, insofar as it's considered that a human body, a mind that has incarnated, taken birth in a human body, is the best way for that mind to attain enlightenment, particularly here, the best way to arouse bodhicitta. And so when we read the text, and when we come to the fourth verse there, we should turn our minds to the teachings on the precious human birth that has the requisite, the necessary freedom, leisure, ease, and the necessary opportunities and advantages, both personally and environmentally, environmentally. And so you should be clear as to what those are and analyze your own life to see whether you actually have all of the necessary freedoms and advantages, the 8 freedoms and 10 advantages. And when you come up short, then understand what the karma is that would enable you to have all those precious freedoms and advantages in place. I mean, we lose them throughout the day and night. It's not like it's that we've bought a whole package. It's a whole package of 18 advantages. We have to know on a kind of an ongoing basis that we have these advantages and opportunities. When we make that the thread of our life that holds all the pieces together, then everything we do will become more meaningful. And our mind will become anchored into the Dharma. And so that 4th verse related to this body that we have as the basis for bodhicitta. And then the 5th chapter here is the mind as the basis. Particularly, he discusses here how rare and unusual it is to desire to do something good, something positive, something wholesome. That doesn't happen on its own steam, so to speak, very much. I mean, if the case is that we've been cycling through all the various manifestations of our karma in samsara since beginningless time, then there hasn't been very much opportunity to do virtuous acts. Mostly, even if we just took, those beings that we can see, humans, animals, maybe some people see, ghosts and spirits and things like that. But mostly, it's just survival of the fittest kind of idea, people and animals. So the action for virtuous thoughts to arise in our mind, that is the basis for bodhicitta. I'm sure that if you've all had virtuous thoughts, which is why you're all here. And so this fifth verse really tells us to practice, like it says in the commentary, like a blind person wandering in the desert who by chance happens to grab the tail of a cow. To just hold on. I don't know if that makes that much sense to us if you're not around cows much, but that's the idea. Commentaries, maybe 1 out of 1,000 thoughts is virtuous. So that's the kind of a mind that we need to have, that kind of merit, just to get going, just to launch ourselves in bodhicitta development. Okay, then moving on to the next section, I think this 6th, 7th, and 8th verses discuss the benefits in a general way of bodhicitta. And this first chapter, for me, like this first chapter is really key because we need to really understand what the name of this is, the excellence of bodhicitta, this chapter. I think we need to again and again and again study, contemplate, remind ourselves, affirm the importance and excellence of bodhicitta. And maybe you've heard bodhicitta, a couple hundred times at least. But then it just gets sidelined, and other things turn out to be more important. So this chapter is so important in order to develop bodhicitta. But we've got lots of ideas about what's important. But if we want to attain perfect enlightenment, then we have to make bodhicitta the most important thing in our life. So the 6th, 7th, and 8th verse, they go together. He says, virtue thus is weak, and always evil is of great and overwhelming strength, except for perfect bodhicitta. What other virtue is there that can lay it low? Maybe I'll read these first and then go back. For many eons, deeply pondering, the mighty sages saw its benefits, whereby unnumbered multitudes are brought with ease to supreme joy. Those who wish to crush the many sorrows of existence, who wish to quell the pain of living beings, who wish to have experience of a myriad joy, should never turn away from bodhicitta. Okay, so virtue thus is weak. I don't think I have to say so much about that. And always because it's weak, because we haven't made a big habit of it. But evil, here it says evil means non-virtuous thoughts. Non-virtuous thoughts we're very used to, we're very comfortable with non-virtuous thoughts. Our non-virtuous thoughts are great because they are constant. There are constant companions. Just like at night, like in the previous section, it says on a dark night, our negative thoughts are always with us, just like the darkness is during the night. And overwhelming strength. They have our negative thoughts cause us, in the immediate moment even, suffering. And for certainly when they ripen in the future with all the other negative thoughts supporting them, then our suffering will be very great. So bodhicitta says, except for perfect bodhicitta, which here is like, we can say the bodhicitta is like the sun. What other virtue is there that can lay it low? What other virtue can overwhelm our negative habits, our negative thought habits? Our thoughts are difficult to reverse. They control us. That's why it says our great and overwhelming strength. It means they're difficult to reverse. So he says, what other virtue is there that can lay it low except for perfect bodhicitta? Like, why does he say that? Shantideva, why does he say that? So the next line says, basically the next verse references that Buddhas, for Buddhas who have appeared, like right now, our time, Buddha Shakyamuni. Then the previous eras, there's been countless Buddhas in the past. And they've all contemplated what will benefit beings. What will be the greatest benefit for beings, both in the long term and in the short term. What will what do you say, destroy their negative actions, so they won't have to experience the harmful, the painful results of negative actions. What will increase the virtue, the little shoots, the little seeds, the little bitty virtue? What will cause those virtues to grow and expand? What will bring beings in that condition? What will bring them to perfect enlightenment? And what will what that will be will have to always work. It can't be bound by history or, era, like epics and historical periods. It can't be, like it here says, whereby unnumbered multitudes. What can Buddha would say, what is the teaching that will always apply, basically, to all beings, if they can absorb it? And the answer has always been, throughout time, bodhicitta. It can't be restricted to by any external thing. If you have a mind, then the only thing, the best thing would be to develop bodhicitta, because it does destroy sin. It destroys, we say sin. Sin means the negative actions that result in suffering. It destroys past suffering, and bodhicitta destroys future suffering. But even if you destroy the seeds of negative actions in the past, we still have habits. We still have tendencies, propensities. And so bodhicitta incinerates those propensities, those tendencies as well, our habits. And it nurtures, just like this, like the sun, it nurtures like the sun nurtures the seeds of virtue, bodhicitta, and it brings about and establishes a person into this state of unsurpassable, perfect awakening. And with this, are brought with ease to supreme joy. So there's a bodhicitta with this one factor. All of that occurs. Ultimate benefit, temporary benefit, just with one factor. And without it, no matter what you do, no matter how much glorification, no matter how wonderful your behavior is, your activity, your dharma practice, if it doesn't have bodhicitta, it won't lead to this state of perfect enlightenment. If you do have bodhicitta, then how that bodhicitta, the practice that you do, the virtue that you engage in with bodhicitta, the virtue you do is not so much. You will attain enlightenment. I don't know if I made that clear. But, practicing dharma without bodhicitta, the outcomes are questionable, or they could be probably worse. And no matter what you practice, no matter what dharma you practice, if you have bodhicitta, you will attain enlightenment. Okay? So I think that's clear. Okay, so then the Buddhas taught bodhicitta, and they've always taught bodhicitta as the most efficacious method to attain Buddhahood. So that's why Shantideva says what he says in the previous verse. What other virtue is it that can lay it low? Okay, then, therefore, if that's the case, then those who wish to crush the many sorrows of existence. So here, if you want to get over your own suffering, the repetition of samsara, birth, old age, sickness, death, again and again, this cycle of birth, old age, sickness, and death that particularly afflicts humans. And without even going into the, since we're talking about here, the first line refers to you, to us. If you want to get rid of your suffering, then if you wish to get rid of the suffering of others, if you want for yourself and you want for others this enlightenment, the joy and bliss of enlightenment, then we can't think that it's going to come from any other place except bodhicitta. We should never let it go. Here it says, never turn away from bodhicitta. Never let it go. And seize it with the mind. It's the object of grasping that destroys grasping. So if we care for ourselves and if we care for others and don't want to suffer and don't want them to suffer, but rather have this blissful experience, both temporary and ultimate, then the method to adopt is bodhicitta. Here, suffering particularly, we have three kinds of suffering. The suffering of change, where it has to do with when you're happy, when you're comfortable, when you're confident, when you're sort of in a good mood, you're uplifted, and then it changes to problems. Problem comes up. Physical problem, outer environmental problem. Something comes up and you're not happy anymore. That's called, the unit is called the suffering of change. And then there's the suffering on top of suffering, where one suffering gets an additional suffering on top of it. There's a lot of that. And then we have many methods to antidote these two kinds of suffering as humans. I mean, animals and other creatures, they also suffer in this way. Some creatures, some beings only suffer the suffering on top of suffering. They never go through the suffering of change. The only suffering of change is that the previous suffering they had doesn't feel as bad as the present suffering. What do we call it? From the frying pan into the pot or boiling pot, something like that. And then there's different ways. Like animals, when it gets cold, then they run off into some place or go underground in the winter or whatever. They're hungry, then they go and hunt, get food somehow. So they're trying to antidote these two kinds of suffering. People we also, we invent fleece and use animals for warmth and for food to alleviate our suffering and our hunger and so forth. And so we're always trying to antidote, to contradict these sufferings, kind of hold them off. We buy various kinds of insurance to insure against loss, so we won't have to suffer a loss. We go and we have all kinds of good therapies that will prevent us from getting stuck in this suffering of change, where we remember being happy and we think that we should get back and be happy again, this kind of thing. Or we have religions that try to antidote these sufferings, or philosophies, psychologies, all these kinds of things, different views, different positions and so forth, to avoid or to counteract or antidote these two kinds of suffering. The third kind of suffering is more subtle. It's called, some places it's called all-pervasive suffering. What it is, it's called the suffering like imminent suffering. The suffering that's occurring underneath the surface, whether we're happy or sad. I don't know, it's called, in Tibetan, the word suffering in the making. Like this kind of suffering. It has to do with the subtle clinging to our feelings and our body and our experiences. Not in a more obvious kind of rough way, like suffering of change or suffering of happiness, but it's this more fundamental. Dharma antidotes that kind of suffering. It uses suffering on suffering, suffering of change, uses those experiences not to get over or antidote, but to get at the root, which is this clinging to the self when there is none. That subtle clinging is this suffering in the making. It's always in motion. Always in motion. Okay, so here, that's what's being referred to here, these three kinds of suffering. So, the idea is to seize bodhicitta. So you contemplate these three, verse 6, 7, and 8, to support the importance of bodhicitta itself. There's the benefits of bodhicitta. We could say that the three, and in this chapter and in the book, there's like hundreds, maybe thousands of benefits of bodhicitta, that they could all be, maybe just simple way of putting it is, they destroy the effects of negative actions. They promote the seeds of virtue. They nourish the seeds of virtue, and bodhicitta leads to enlightenment. Three things. Okay, then, verse 9. This verse by itself has to do with the the change that an individual undergoes when they take on the responsibility of engaging in bodhicitta, that is to say, taking the pledge to attain enlightenment for the sake of sentient being, all beings, to bring all beings, so that all beings attain enlightenment. So when you take that pledge, which is where we're headed here, and the third chapter involves that. So here we're just setting the course for the rest of the book, basically. But to show how bodhicitta is so excellent, that just when you give rise to bodhicitta, here, I'll read it like I did. Should bodhicitta come to birth in those who suffer, chained in prisons of samsara, in that instant they are called the children of the blissful one, revered by all the world, by gods and humankind. So just simply by taking this bodhicitta vow, or bodhisattva vow, this vow that expresses your intention for all sentient beings to awaken to Buddhahood, that even though it's not like you then, get beamed up or have this epiphany, or the other one, where you all go up to get, up into some planet somewhere. But even though we are having problems, and we've got our issues and so forth, and we're way embedded in samsara at this point, simply by giving rise to, just simply by having that bodhicitta arise, and bodhicitta here means I said last teaching was bodhicitta here means a heroic mind. A heroic mind. It's heroic because it's going to take guts and courage to persist at this bodhicitta training until you attain enlightenment. Until all beings attain enlightenment. Imagine, that's not going to be. We need more than just inspiration and excitement. We need courage. So, should this heroic mind arise in you, even though you're in the midst of your life, it's got all of its stuff, COVID and you name it. And that, just at that point, then you are elevated, and you're not an ordinary person anymore, basically. You are an heir to the Buddhas. Here it says you're the children of the blissful one. Blissful one is, again, this term I used last time, or Shantideva used last time, was Sugata. The one who goes easily, who goes well. So you are the offspring of them, of the Buddhas, basically. In that instant, they're called the children, revered by all the world, by gods and humankind. So basically, you're a bodhisattva. You have a new identity. A new identity. So your name, you're not just an ordinary person, your name changes to a bodhisattva. Instead of you're an ordinary person, now you're an ordinary person, but you're not an ordinary person, you're an ordinary bodhisattva. Just taking the vow means you're a bodhisattva, but you're a bodhisattva of ordinary type. But it's a new identity, bodhisattvas. And revered by all the world, by gods and humankind. Of course, then even like it says, in one Prajna Paramita, that for just an ordinary person, when they take the Bodhisattva pledge, from that instant on, if a fully enlightened Buddha, pick that person up put them on their shoulders and carried them to a, well, in the text it says a chariot, you know, and they put them in that chariot on a golden seat and put the cloth on them and what do you call it, you know, a cape and all these things. Then they did that, and then the Buddha went and picked up the little sticks and pulled that person along, or that bodhisattva along. That would be completely appropriate, says there. Because even the Buddhas, like a Buddha is completely enlightened, complete independent from any outside influences, completely free of all encumbrances. They're, like if a Buddha has a master, it's bodhicitta. So for a Buddha to revere and to honor just an ordinary person who gives rise to that is appropriate, because a Buddha is honoring their own master, bodhicitta. Because a Buddha didn't attain enlightenment from some other teaching. Buddha attains enlightenment through the teachings of bodhicitta. Okay. So that's that. So here, this chapter, verse 9 here, we should think that we should hear when you read this and you contemplate this verse, particularly so that you gain confidence. Because without confidence, we need confidence. I don't want to think, but without confidence. Without confidence, we got where we are now. Let's not go there. With this confidence of bodhicitta, the confidence that, as it says in the Mahayana, all sentient beings have Buddha nature. There's no sentient being that doesn't have Buddha nature. Anything that has a mind, the nature of that mind is wisdom and compassion inseparable. How that creature experiences that mind is through their obscurations, karma and so forth, karma, afflictive emotions, habits, ignorance, clinging, all these things. That's how they experience their mind. They don't experience it as Buddha, what is it, hood, purity. So this we should contemplate very deeply. That's I guess a Mahayana fact. That all sentient beings have Buddha nature. Buddhists call it Buddha nature. It just means our mind is already pure. It doesn't need to be purified. Our mind has never been contaminated. It's never been confused. It never didn't know what to do, so to speak. It's always been in a state of perfection. And so we need to appreciate that, because I think for some of us, well, for us, we weren't, I don't know about other cultures and how much people really believe, like in Buddhist cultures. I can't really account for whether or not people really believe a whole lot of Buddhist teachings. They may not have heard so much, but we certainly, I can't speak for all you out there, but you know, that's a new concept in our thinking, and that view that all beings have Buddha nature. And so we're one of the Buddha nature holding beings. Our nature is Buddha now. For that we should understand more and more and contemplate that. This Tathagata Garbha, this of Buddha nature. Because that actually is called the primary cause for enlightenment, is Buddha nature. Not karmically caused, but the primary cause, so to speak. Dharma is about all the paths to get there, but the fact that it's already there is the cause of your enlightenment. And so just to recognize that as a possibility, and to appreciate that you now have committed, you are committing yourself to revealing that, to making evident that nature for the benefit of all sentient beings, then that's the source of, you should feel confident in that. That's what's being asked of us here with this verse. Okay. Then let's see, 8, 27, the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verses are contemplations by way of examples or metaphors, bodhicitta, of things that are examples of bodhicitta. The first one is, it says here, for like the supreme substance of the alchemist, it takes our impure flesh and makes of it the body of a Buddha, jewel beyond all price. Such as bodhicitta, let us grasp it firmly. So this is using the example of the alchemy. That bodhicitta is like an elixir. I don't know, we don't have so much alchemy. Maybe some people looked into it, but it takes, you have some magic ingredient like mercury, and you, through some elixir additive thing, you turn iron into gold. That's the idea. So here, like the supreme substance of the it's just that's the elixir that makes gold out of something crude and not so valuable. And so the example is that bodhicitta takes our body, and here it says takes our impure flesh and makes of it the body of a Buddha. So here, like in the teachings of the Hinayana, or the I don't know what will I use, Hinayana teachings, like the teachings of the basic Buddhist teachings. There's the contemplations of the 30, a lot of the parts of the body, all the different parts of the body, and like here we talked about here, Pratyeka Buddhas and the listeners and the hearers and the Pratyeka Buddhas. Our meditation is contemplating the impurity of the body. The hair is impure, the teeth is impure, skin is impure, the stomach is impure, intestines are impure, the nails are impure, the snot is impure, the plaque, teeth is impure. While you're contemplating these, it's a contemplation. It's to develop sort of a negative attitude about your body and about the bodies of others, in order to reduce your desire. Reduce desire, particularly like sexual desire. So it's for monks, then it's important because they have a lot of it, and so they need to contemplate this. And that's a basic Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism doesn't, here they're saying not that. Here they're saying bodhicitta. It's not rejecting the body, but it's employing bodhicitta, and through the elixir-like quality of bodhicitta, this ordinary body, which is kind of, it is kind of impure. I'm not saying it's not, but it transforms that body into the body of a Buddha. The body of a Buddha means a wisdom body, like a Buddha's body, speech, and mind. For us, those things are kind of randomly associated. You know, our mind doesn't know what our body's doing. Our body doesn't know our body is back here. Our mind's over there. Our speech, you know, we're kind of disconnected or disjointed. The Buddhas, there's no difference between, they're all an expression of the wisdom of a Buddha, of enlightenment. The body, we can think, has the 32 characteristics of a Buddha's body, the 32 major, and there's the minor marks and major marks, and they're all the expression of the merit of the Buddha, the merit that the Buddha has accumulated in his career as a bodhisattva. The expression is a Buddha's body is a heap of merit. His teeth are such and such because of the merit of such and such. Those are all these things. He's attractive looking because of the merit of something. He has this ushnisha at the top of his swelling at the top of the head because of some virtue, and everything, the earlobes and so forth, the height and the length of his arms and the tongue, and everything is all the display or the maturing or the expression of his virtue. And that virtue was actions done for the benefit of others, impelled solely by bodhicitta. And so the body of a Buddha is like a wish-fulfilling jewel. And so they say then, so he says here then, such is bodhicitta, let us grasp it firmly. So you pledge, make a commitment and make a pledge to not relinquish bodhicitta. Basically, alchemy is a process of turning something bad into something good, something impure into something pure. And the ingredient in that, in our case here, is bodhicitta. That we can bad into good, samsara into nirvana. The elixir is a bodhicitta. Okay, so we're at 10. So I think I'll stop here.